So a huge welcome to this short video presentation on how to take a photograph, which is a supporting resource for the local nature photography competition 2024. So before I introduce the wonderful Nigel Walker, who will be talking you through how to take a photograph, I will just provide a little more information about the competition itself. So this competition is all about nature, and we are looking for photographs that depict one of the following habitat types. So woodland, water and wetland, urban nature, grassland, coast, large landscape, which can include multiple habitats, and people in nature. So the competition is open to all ages, with 2 age categories for each habitat, so under 18s and 18 plus. You have the chance for your photograph to be featured in the Hull and East Yorkshire local nature recovery strategy, which is currently being developed to identify locations to improve nature and provide other environmental benefits such as carbon sequestration, flood regulation, and access to nature-rich spaces. So not only that, winners also receive a £25 multi-store gift card and could have their photograph featured in an exhibition in East Riding Libraries. So the judging panel will include members from the Hull and East Yorkshire Local Nature Partnership, the Yorkshire Marine Nature Partnership and East Riding Libraries, who have partnered with the Local Nature Partnership for this competition. The competition opens on Monday, the 2nd of September 2024, and entries close at 5 p.m. on Monday, the 28th of October 2024. There are further details about the competition and how to enter on the link below. So without further ado, it's time to introduce Nigel Walker, who will be giving you top hints and tips that you can use when taking your competition photograph. So Nigel is a local East Riding photographer who has been taking photographs for over 60 years, including sequences for exhibitions such as The Red Dress and Say Something, as well as portraiture, travel, and of course, landscape photographs. So Nigel has also been the official photographer for local events such as the Beverley Puppet Festival and international events like the Fire and Ice Ultramarathon in Iceland. He often speaks at camera clubs and has also been a judge for photography competitions, so is in a great place to help guide you through how to take a photograph in this presentation. You can take a look at some examples of Nigel's photography, which are absolutely worth a look, and Nigel will be sharing his website at the end of the presentation so that you can check these out. So thank you very much for joining us, Nigel. I will now hand over to you for your expertise.
Thank you very much, Hayley. That's great. I'm going to talk for possibly 20 minutes today and try and cover as much ground as I can, but I will not make everyone an expert by the end of this. What I will point you in some directions, however, that you can go to. First of all, at the top of each of the slides under the heading, you will see some online help that's available. You may not catch it all here, and I understand that. But what I would say is if you want to know things, go to YouTube, put in photography, and then the question that you have. It's excellent. You will find lots of things. The ones I've referred to are the ones that I think are the best and shortest and most clear. Taking a photograph requires you to understand that a camera has 3 particular things that will make your photograph look like you want it to look. So shutter speed, ISO, which is the sensitivity of the sensor, and aperture, which is how much light you're letting in through the lens. These 3 things all work together in every photograph. And if you don't understand your camera and you don't understand how to use them, go away, have a think about it, look at your camera, decide what it can do, read the instructions, look online, and just go out and experiment. It can be great fun. Those 3 things, though, are the things that I will talk about as we go through the rest of this. Keeping those in some sort of balance, not necessarily the ones that you think will give you the best or sharpest photograph, may be what will get you a prize-winning picture. Ansel Adams, who was an American landscape photographer, said, "The single most important component of a camera is the 12 inches behind it. And that means you, your head, and how you see things." I want to start by saying something about composition. There are many people who talk about the rules of composition, and there are many rules that they will recommend to you. You can go online and find out much more about that. I'm just going to talk about one, which is the rule of thirds. And here you'll see a picture taken on the Westwood, where the bottom third of that picture is pretty much landscape leading to the silhouetted horizon. In the middle, you've got the two main things that are showing, a tree and the black mill with the sun just setting behind it. And the top of the picture merely gives you a strap of colour with the top of the tree. Very many people say this helps our eyes to read a picture by separating things into those thirds. So on the left-hand side of the picture, we have the tree, and on the right, we have the black mill with that defined landscape in the middle. That's a classic rule of thirds photograph. And to take that, I moved around the Westwood, looking through my shutter until I got that picture balanced just right. On the other side, I've broken that rule completely. There is almost nothing on the left-hand side of the picture. However, there is a road that's leading my eye into the picture and off to the left. There's some smoke that's moving across the road to the left and partially eliminating the tree in the background, and there is one major tree in the foreground. That doesn't mean that that's not a good composition. It means it's a different composition. This picture has none of the rules of composition in it. It relies almost entirely on structure of the flowers in it, the colour and the texture. However, you'll also see running across the middle of the picture that some of the flowers are in sharp focus. Those nearest to us are not in focus, and those beyond us are not in focus either, because I've used something called depth of field. So we'll talk about that now. Depth of field is a method by which we can concentrate people's minds on one part of a photograph or show them a much bigger picture. So in the picture of the anemone on the left-hand side of the screen, you will see it have concentrated on the centre of that flower with the seed pods just starting to come out. I've done that quite deliberately, and the rest of the picture is blurry. That's been set at an f-stop of around 2.8 to get that effect. So learning about f-stops is quite important, because at the other side of the picture, on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see a long road with a tree apparently right in the middle of it at the end of the line of trees. Actually, there's a bend in the road and you can't see it. But because I wanted to show everything in a pretty sharp focus in this photograph, I put it on a tripod. I set it to f22 and a slower shutter speed, so it took in all of the light. This is another way of taking a picture using depth of field, because here, depth of field, just like the field of flowers, is rather across the centre. But I've also blurred that slightly. We can see that it's a field. We can see that there's wheat in that field. Maybe it's rye, I don't know, I'm not a farmer. But I've also blurred out the red of the poppies to give it more appeal in terms of the colour. So the colour of the red seems to blend into that green of the field. So there are all sorts of ways that we can show exactly what we want to, not what we have to. Pictures do not have to always be pin sharp. You do have to think about focus, however, and here we've got two pictures. If you're going to photograph people, people will always say the eyes are the most important part of the face and the portrait, and they must be in focus. And here I photographed a model called Angela, and her face is in good focus. Her eye in particular, we can see the colour, we can see the lashes. On the other side, I've taken a picture of my granddaughter, and she's a bit of a bundle of energy, and I wanted to demonstrate that. So I've taken the picture at a much slower speed, so that as she goes up and down on the seesaw, we see some of that movement. And again, if you're going to photograph animals or people in a landscape, you may want to choose whether you get sharp focus or whether you get some movement in the picture. When I talk about focusing, this is another picture taken at f/22, but it's also taken in a particular light. These sculptures of horses are called the Kelpies, and they're up in Falkirk in Scotland. And I wanted to photograph them one evening. It's about 8:20 during the summer, late summer. And I wanted the light in a particular way, and I wanted to be able to show through the depth of the field both the snow on the mountains in the background, the little bit of light on the hump of hill just before it reaches the snow and between the horse's neck. And I wanted the sun to hit the side of the horses so that I got some shadow that defined their shape very clearly. Here's another picture which many people probably would not take. This tree is one that I photograph frequently. It's near my house, and you'll see it again in the picture in just a second. One day when I was driving home, I intended taking a photograph of the picture, but it was pouring with rain. I still took a photograph just through the windscreen, and that's not in sharp focus at all, but we can make out what it is, and we can see the circumstances in which it was taken. So don't be afraid to shoot things that may not be as obvious as you think. It does make people look more carefully sometimes at pictures. Here's that tree again. It's down on the left. And I've put the centre of the horizon pretty much in the middle of the picture. The tree is there to the right of the picture, sorry, to the left of the picture. And on the right, we've got a nice curving path through the field with complementary colours of a blue sky and the yellow of the oilseed rape nearer to us. That picture would not look good in black and white. It would not have the same effect. On the other side, however, I've taken a picture of a steam train coming across the Ribble Head viaduct in the Dales. I knew this train was going to be there at that time, and I'd already been told that the smoke that was going to be let off, or the steam rather, that was going to be let off, would be let off at this point. When I got there, I saw that the sky was dark, casting a shadow on the hills behind, so I decided that I would position myself to make sure I got the steam coming out of the train engine so it would stand out against the darkness of the hills. This position also gave me some nice dark arches on the viaduct itself so that people could see what it was. If I had left this as a colour picture, then it would not have been as impressive as you might think it is if you see it as a black and white one. The colours would have changed the whole shape of what you see within the picture. So making a decision about your photographs as to whether they are better in colour or black and white is entirely up to you. It doesn't matter, but you can improve a picture through using colour or using black and white. I want to just say something about the light that you take photographs in as well. Again, on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see an early morning photograph. I woke up one day, saw the frost on the trees, saw the mist, and thought, this is too good an opportunity to miss. So I went out with my camera, and this is a lane near where I live, where I happened to catch two dog walkers fading into the distance. And there's the whiteness of the trees, the dullness of the mist cast a particular light that you just could not get at any other time. Equally, I was in London at a photo show when a sudden burst of light came through and accentuated the shape, the bow of that window, and cast just a small rainbow next to the photograph. And I took that particular picture at that time. So being aware of light, being aware of what it's like and what it does is important. This picture was taken in Venice. I packed everything up and I was on my way home. In fact, I was waiting to go back to the airport and there was a thick mist in front of me. Then I realised that the sun was rising and that the sun, as it heated up the mist, would burn it off. So I quickly looked for my camera, got it out and managed just 4 shots the last of which was this particular one. The picture was enhanced by the fact that this boat happened to sail across the front where the sun was carving a little path across the canal. But you have to know how weather works sometimes in order to make the most of it. You can shoot at night as well, of course, and this is a harvest moon. It's that tree again that I often shoot, and I'd gone out specifically because the tree was now bare of leaves and the moon was going to be a full one, and I wanted just to catch that atmosphere. Here's a picture that many people would have tried to take this with a sunset in the background, because sunset's always great. This was taken from the top of the Flemingate car park. It's obviously the Minster in Beverley, which is always lit at night anyway. I waited until the sun had just gone down, but there was still some colour in the sky. You can see some movement in the clouds as well. It was quite a windy day, and I put my camera onto a tripod and given it a slightly longer exposure to get that movement. We can see around the Minster that lights are coming on. There's some street lights, and finding the right position to take a photograph like this, choosing the right time, scouting it out beforehand, is for me all part of the fun. I want to just mention the shape of your photographs, what's known as aspect ratio in terms of photographs. Again, you can look at this. The photograph of the Lord Line building with the graffiti in, I wanted to show the light from the window, but there is also a door that's casting some light onto the wall underneath the framework on the left-hand side of the picture. It's also very dark, so the top of the picture is dark and parts of the left-hand side of the picture are also blacked out. I put this into a 16:9 ratio, which is usually called letterboxing, and this accentuated some of those things. So it helped me with the composition, which we talked about before. Equally, on the other side, in Grimsby, there was this little roundabout that I wanted to show. There was nothing else of interest apart from that wheel in the background. So I made this square picture, again, to just accentuate the shape of that. Abstraction. We can take pictures that will make people wonder what we're looking at. On the left is a gate that's chained up. You can just see the chain. It's had lots of paint on it. It's got rust on it. It's had some posters on it that have been ripped off at different times. And we can just see a wall through that little hole as well. The other picture is taken in a stable, and it's a horse. Not everyone sees that immediately because it doesn't have the whole of the shape of the horse's head in. It has instead a very dark eye and that little streak of light running down the side of its face. And we can do a number of things with abstraction that help us to show things differently. This was a piece of fencing that I came across. Fencing's generally keeping people out. It's hard, it's solid, it's not meant to let us through. And yet, here was some light dancing on it, and we can see on the pavement, on the blocks in front, that it does appear to be very fluid and very moving, in contradiction to the actual thing itself. So keep your eyes open for these things. They can make prize-winning photographs. This photograph is one, it's actually three photographs merged together. This is Humber Street in Hull. In the centre, you'll see a woman just walking towards me, but then you will see some of the surroundings, the names of the places, people sitting outside and eating, which gives a nice vibe of that place. It's in colour as well. It was a sunny day, as you can tell, and we managed to capture that in the photograph itself. My camera will take photographs like this and merge them inside the camera. Yours may too. So check it out because it's a good way. It'll take a bit of practice, but it's worth sticking with. Also, I'm going to mention something called intentional camera movement. And this is pretty much the last thing I'm going to say to you. Intentional camera movement means setting your camera up so that if you move it during the fact that you're taking the photograph, you get this little bit of blur. So the sunflowers, which was a big field of sunflowers on the left-hand side of the picture, I've just panned the camera from left to right as I've taken the shot, but I've allowed about half a second. Similarly, on the other side, this is a number of columns covered with fairy lights, and I've moved the camera slightly up and down while I've taken this photograph. So you get abstracted pictures, although they are actually pictures of reality. Pretty much the last thing I want to say is about storytelling. The American photographer Robert Adams wrote in a very influential piece called Beauty in Photography, influential for me at least, that pictures can offer us three verities or truths: geography, autobiography, and metaphor. What he goes on to say is that geography in itself is not very interesting, autobiography in itself is not very interesting, and metaphor is not very interesting. But if you put those things together, they become much more. So this picture was taken in Liverpool, which is my place of birth. When I was 18, I worked in a small porter cabin, which is where this building now stands. If I was still there, I would be squashed by now. So that has both something for me about where I come from, Liverpool, something about where I was in my autobiography, which is about working there when I was 18 and all the things that happen when you're 18 and in that very exciting stage of life. But also there's another element of this for me. Liverpool is associated with ships, as a port city. This building looks to me like a ship, the prow of a ship coming towards me. My father happened to be a merchant seaman, one of the reasons we lived in Liverpool. And so this always reminds me of him. I can see the Seagull over on the right-hand side of the building. I can see two open windows at the far left, which remind me of Port Owls. Even more than that, the reflective nature of the glass and the cladding on this building show me the clouds, and it looks to me as though this ship possibly is full of clouds that might represent dreams. So somehow we're sailing away with my past into a future that has some dreams in it. And that's the power of geography, autobiography, and metaphor in a storytelling context. That's all I've got to say apart from good luck. Thanks very much for joining me in this video. You can contact me via my website. It has a contact page. Anything that you send me, I will attempt to answer your questions, and I'll be keeping an eye on that from tomorrow onwards. So good luck. I hope that you have fun in the contest, and I'm going to hand you back now to Hayley Clark.
Thank you so much, Nigel. That was absolutely brilliant, and hopefully will help everybody as they are taking their photographs for the competition. Alice, do you have any final things you'd like to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to second Hayley and say thank you so much, Nigel. That was such a brilliant presentation, and as a budding photographer myself, even at the ripe old age of 36, I think I've learned a lot from your presentation, and I'm just really excited to see everybody's pictures. And I love that quote from the photographer that you cited. I think we've got a lot to celebrate in East Riding, and I'm really looking forward to seeing everybody's different stories coming through. So thank you once again.